Sorry, just gonna give me a wrong message and then I'll do it.
Okay.
Thank you, Dan. I'm glad you were up here.
When I said hi, Ed, we have the same voice. I just heard you from over my shoulder. Sorry about that.
That is ugly.
No.
Now, I ain't helping him any.
All right. Thank you.
Anybody else?
What now?
He wants me to update my password. Let's see if I can get around that.
You all set?
All set, Mr. Chairman.
Meeting will please come to order. This is a duly advertised meeting of the Joliet Zoning Board of Appeals. In our capacity, we hear petitions for relief from the strict provisions of our city ordinance. In matters of this type, the decision of this board is final in respect that it does not go to the mayor or the city council for any further action. To disagree with our decision, you do have recourse in a court of record. We also hear petitions for variations of land use. In matters of this type, we act as an advisory committee to the mayor and city council, making a recommendation either for or against it. Final decision on land use is made by the mayor and the city council. Secretary, please poll the board.
Ms. Safford?
Here.
Mr. Alessio?
Here.
Mr. Noctree?
Here.
Mr. Riggs?
Here.
Mr. Hennessy?
Here.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, the first item would be the approval of the July 16th, 2020 Zoning Board of Appeals minutes.
I would so move.
Second.
Call the roll.
Mr. Alessio?
Aye.
Mr. Noctree?
Aye.
Mr. Riggs?
Aye.
Ms. Safford?
Aye.
Mr. Hennessy?
Here, aye.
Thank you. Next item on our agenda is citizens to be heard on agenda items. This section is for anyone wanting to speak regarding items listed on the agenda. Our maximum 4-minute rule is in effect.
Are you going to be speaking on items on the agenda, or is this?
It would be on the agenda, which is 2621 Cities Edge Drive.
Or should we wait until we hear?
We can wait.
Go ahead.
Is that okay?
Yeah, this item is coming up fairly soon, so we'll wait till we, yeah.
And the petition is before the board. Go ahead.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, we did have, under old business public hearing, there are no items. Next, new business public hearing, there is a request to move 2020-29, and that is the City's Edge request to the top of the agenda.
Are there any objections to the board? Okay, call 29 first.
Petition number 2029. Applicant in this matter is City's Edge Lot 2 Condominium Association. The owner is Briscoe Financial, LLC, and Van Man Properties, LLC. Location 2621 City's Edge Drive. The request in this matter is for a variation. The petitioner is requesting a variation from the city's non-residential design standards to permit the building's exterior metal siding to remain. The Zoning Board of Appeals has final approval of this type of request. Under site-specific information, the area in question was previously annexed in Zone B3 General Business in 1970. The 1.17 acre site in question is located on Lot 2 in City's Edge subdivision. The site includes a 16,000 square foot commercial building with 9 separate tenant spaces, and it was built in 2006. The petitioner was approved for outdoor storage on Lot 1 of City's Edge subdivision in December 2018. Surrounding zoning, land use, and character: to the north is commercial, B3, and that's Joliet General Business. To the east is commercial, B3, as well to the south, however, that is undeveloped. To the west is residential, Village of Shanahan. Applicable regulations, section 47-15H, non-residential design standards. General discussion. In 2006, the existing building was constructed with the existing metal panel siding on the upper level in violation of the non-residential design standards. In order to come in compliance, a cement siding was added over the metal siding. Since that time, the cement siding has failed and has been removed. The petitioner would like to leave the metal siding and paint it. And that concludes the staff report, Mr. Chairman.
Petitioner present. I swear the evidence you're about to present is the truth under penalty of law.
Yes, I do, Your Honor. Thank you. Michael Hanson, attorney, 111 North Ottawa Street. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. First of all, I just want to point out that those pictures are the old pictures of the building. They're not the current pictures that shows a much better condition of the siding in those pictures. I think the report speaks for itself. A couple of comments I'd like to make. Number one is that the cost to bring this building into compliance with the city code is going to be well in excess of $70,000. I think that's cost prohibitive for that. If you were able to go out and look at this building, the building looks fine. And especially when you consider the location of the building in the far southwest section of the city where you can't, it's not visible directly from the highway. The owners keep the building in a good condition. You know, I think it's the appropriate reason for a variance where, you know, the cost and the location are such that it speaks out for a variance from the ordinance.
What?
This is the
Questions by
current
the board?
state.
Yeah, I have a question, Mr. Hanson. You say the pictures in the memo are out of date in terms
That is
of the
correct.
paint? So it has been painted?
Yes.
The picture that's being displayed now on the boards, I believe, is the current state today.
I mean, like the one that's up right now?
Yes.
And do you have any
Yeah, that's
idea
the
how old
current
that
state.
paint job is?
I'm going to let the owner of the building speak to that.
Jason Briscoe on behalf of Briscoe Financial LLC. The picture that you have there is the current state of the building. Previous, when they were throwing through the slides, it was showing the hardy board siding that had failed right there. That was the condition when the building was purchased, and that siding has been removed. All the holes have been properly filled. The siding that is remaining up there is a pre-finished colored metal siding. It is a white siding, and it has brown or tan exterior trims, as you will see, and tan downspouts. More of, I guess, an accent, but that is the current picture. I think what Mr. Hanson was referring to was the previous slides where it's showing it all decaying and coming off.
And
If I
how-
could ask you a question, excuse me, Mr. Alessio, did you walk to this property right before the meeting?
Yes, I did. Yeah, I drove by it, and the pictures, from what I can tell, that's being displayed is somewhat representative of what I saw. So,
I'm sorry, did we get the answer to how old this current paint, is it paint or, I'm sorry, what is it?
No, I'm sorry. As I said, the metal is a pre-painted metal. It's not so we have not painted the metal since the hardy board had come off because it is a pre-finished metal product.
You're not answering the question.
So
something-
hasn't been painted.
when was that installed then? Yeah.
At the construction of the building. I believe as staff had said, my understanding, I was not part of the original group of the building. I know one of the owners was, they can maybe speak to it more readily. It was constructed at the time through the city, my understanding, with the pre-finished metal. And at time of occupancy, the city asked them to change the siding. And at that time, they agreed and put up the hardy board, which had then 10 years later or whatever it is, had rotted and failed. So we had that taken off. I don't know if you want to show a previous slide of, again, the previous condition. But so the metal that is currently on there is a pre-finished metal, and it has not been painted. don't know if it necessarily needs
So
to.
that came off.
That's the stuff that had come off. That was the picture of what it was prior, which was beautiful.
So the current metal siding is 14 years old and was always existing underneath all this other stuff?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so that's pre-finished, happened 14 years ago.
And correct, and has never seen the light of day other than,
Okay.
last few months.
And that's what you want to do, is just paint this now and not have to remove the metal
Yes.
siding. At a cost of, what'd you say, $70,000?
Well, to put back the product that failed, the estimates that we have are in excess of 70,000 to put back up the same pictures of what shows there. And to comply with the ordinance, we would have to go back up with that hardy board. To use a dry bit or stucco, you would add about another 20 to 30,000 on top of that number, which it really, I guess at the point, makes it cost prohibitive to do. So just to redo what's there to watch it fail 10 years from now would be around 70,000.
Any further comments by the board?
Yeah,
I guess I want to ask a question here, to be very honest. I personally went out and looked at this property, it was about a month ago, the condition is right there. I am really shocked to see these other pictures of the old building there. I didn't know that they would be displayed, there's no reason for that. I just would like everybody to understand, if everybody knows what the condition of the building is, I think that's fine right now, because if not, then I think we may have to continue in a month to get the proper pictures, Kendall. I don't know how the old pictures got in there.
Well, if you paint it, that's going to resolve that problem, isn't it?
Pardon?
I said, if you
Well, there's
paint
no
it, it's
reason
going to
for it.
resolve the problem
Well,
with the appearance.
With a building in existence form technically doesn't need any painting, as was explained by Mr. Briscoe. Okay, it would have had to have been painted under the old pictures, that was stripped. But we did say that if there needs to be any other painting, then we'll paint it, if any painting is necessary.
Oh, I see, okay.
Kendall, can you clear that up? So in the petition, as I read it, the petition is contingent upon the siding being painted.
Correct, yes.
So
Yes.
it's not, we'll paint it if it needs it, they get the permit and this needs to be painted.
Correct, yes.
So that's what we're voting on.
Well, you're voting on a variation that would allow the
Metal to
metal
stay on
siding
there.
to stay on there.
That's what
Con-
it's
Not
all
be,
Contingent
and not
upon
be,
it being
contingent
painted.
upon being painted,
It's either that or strip
Right.
the metal off and have to put a whole new siding on, which would cause hardship to the petitioner, I would assume. Any other questions by the board? Anyone in the audience wishing to speak in favor? Is there anyone opposed? I swear you in. Do you swear the evidence you're about to present is the truth under penalty of law?
I do.
Name and address, please.
Mike German, 26053.
Speak into the mic, please. We have to record this.
Mike German, 26053 West Lauren Drive, Shanahan. I am one of the original owners of the building when we put it up. One reason why the metal is up right now is we couldn't get the city of Joliet couldn't determine what we were supposed to put on, or what was supposed to be on. So they added after the building was already up and the steel was on. So that's why that hardy board went on and it failed. Right now, I am with Vanman Properties LLC. We have 2 units. One basically is for a non-for-profit softball organization. And if we go in and put the 60-some thousand into it, we're gonna lose a tenant. I can't afford that, to be honest with you. That metal siding, when it first went up, looked very, very good. It still looks very good. Like you said, hasn't seen anything until lately when we took that hardy board off, which failed. If we're forced to put the hardy board back on, you're gonna be looking at another $70-some thousand in another 5, 6, 7 years again. Because the concrete board has been failing for everybody. Homes I've been building have been doing the same thing. So without the city saying what's gonna have to happen or change, I don't understand. And over by Shanahan, where that's right on the border of Shanahan, and it looks nice out there. I don't understand with the subdivision and everything right next to it. It looks very nice out there. So I guess what I'm saying, I will personally be in a hardship if we have to spend the money of $70-some thousand. I can't do it. Thank you.
Was this building originally in Joliet?
Still-
Yes, this entire commercial business park was built in Joliet.
Okay. And the siding, what was put on without permit, is that,
Well, I'm not quite sure what happened with the original
how did we get to this situation in
design
the first place?
review on this. Was this something that was missed, or
Our design standards were in place when this was built, so it wasn't been built
Just-
without the right material. That's
Okay.
why the other material went over the top of it.
got it? So our design standards were in place when this was built, but for some reason, it was constructed with the metal siding and not the masonry or hardboard. And so I guess after the fact, we required that hardy board to go over the metal after it was constructed.
And is that what we're asking them to do? And that's why they're asking for a variation, or what, you know?
Yeah, so,
Yeah.
great question. So the standards are what they are, and they have to comply or ask for a variance. So that's what they're asking for now.
You have
And,
something you wanted to say?
Yeah, I mean, if I can, I'm not trying to make a reach here, but the deal was, 3 of us that built that building were contractors. We could not get a permit because they didn't know what they wanted on the building. So we had to hire Lindblad Construction, who had the building up before permits were even pulled, which we couldn't understand how. So at the time, we had to spend extra money for a Joliet contractor to put it up. That's how the building went up. Then, after it's up, then they come to us and say, you need this siding on there.
Okay, but the reality is the building exists, it does have that siding. I don't see whether it's gonna cause any negative effect on the surrounding area to allow it to be painted. The purpose of this board is not to enforce any laws, but to give relief to the strict interpretation of the law. And we treat that on an individual basis. In my opinion, I don't see where any harm is gonna be done by painting this. It's not going to have a negative effect on the surrounding area that I can see. And I think staff agrees with that point of view. We're not here to enforce any laws. The situation exists. It's maybe unfortunate, but not to allow it would put an undue burden on the petitioner, I think.
And we have a,
Is somebody else wishing to speak in opposition? Come forward.
I'm in favor. Len Larson is my name.
Just swear the evidence you're about to present is the truth under penalty of law.
I do.
So
Name and
if we
address.
can- and Mr.
Len
Chairman-
Larson.
Mr. Chairman, if we can just clarify the record so that we have a clean record, I believe you had asked for comments against, so if we are going to do in favor, that's fine, but if we can just clarify in the record that that's where we are.
What, huh?
If we can just clarify the records that these comments are in favor, you had initially called for comments
Yeah.
against.
Well, let the record show that.
thank you.
So Len Larson, 25137 West Pawnee Lane in Shanahan, Illinois. That's my address. And I am a tenant there. I was the original tenant when the building was built, and I'm still there now, so seen a couple different owners. And I just wanted to say that I'm perfectly fine with the condition that it is in now. I wasn't good with it before Mr. Briscoe had bought the building, and since he's been there, there's been major improvements, including the parking lot and the siding and what have you. So I'm good with the way that it is right now. So I think it's great.
Right, thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in favor? I swear the evidence you're about to present is the truth under penalty of law.
Yes.
Name and address.
Angie Van Dyke, 22548 South River Road in Shorewood.
Okay.
And I am one of the owners of Van Man Properties LLC. We have 2 units in the building, and I do think the building looks, 100% better than it did previously. And if we had to put the siding back on, it would cause a very hardship for me personally.
That it?
Yes.
Thank you. Anyone else? You swear the evidence you're about to present is the truth under the penalty of law.
I do.
Name and address.
Ken Minor, 22911 South Francis Way, Shannon. I live in the neighborhood where the building is. And I actually own all the property around the building. We're the developer of the subdivision. And I'm not here to oppose, or I'm not for or against. The only question that I really have is, so I've got 7 lots. If we're gonna set a standard for the buildings to be built without concrete, I'm good with that. But just remember, we're gonna set a standard for the rest of the buildings that I build out there, because the building across the street at 2600, everything was in place when it was built. We put some, and I sent pictures with my email. We put brick on the bottom, cement on the top. I spent the extra 150 grand. Now we move forward. If I wouldn't have, I could have just asked for variance, but I don't have to do it. So just keep that in mind when I build the rest of my buildings in that subdivision.
No, if a variance is granted on this petition, it applies only to this building. It's not a general variation at all.
But we're setting
That would be
standards
done by
in
the
the
plan
neighborhood.
commission if they wanted to change the ordinance. This is a specific variation that would be granted on that particular building only.
But I do believe we're setting a standard for my subdivision. Would you not agree?
Yeah. What, sir?
I would believe we're setting a standard for the subdivision on the other buildings that I own lots that we would be building on. It's hard to get a developer in that's gonna build a building and you got a mixed standard on them across the street from each other. That's the only point I wanted to make. I'm okay with leaving it. It looks so much better than it did 5 years ago. There's no doubt they've improved the building by taking it off of there. I just wanna, I built the building across the street at the same time and I had to put cement on the entire building.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Anyone wish, oh, come on. You in favor, still?
No, this would be against.
I'm just about to announce that. Anyone wishing to speak in opposition, you're on. Swear the evidence you're about to present is the truth under penalty of law.
I do.
Name and address.
Brian Wellner, I'm an attorney at Mahoney, Brian Wellner, I'm an attorney at Mahoney, Silverman and Cross, 822 129th Infantry, Joliet. There are certain regulations that this board is bound by. They're bound by the zoning code. They're bound by the regulations that provide for variances. And they're specific in what standards you all need to look at. You need to look at whether or not the property can yield a reasonable return. You need to see if the plight of the owner is unique. And you need to see whether or not the variance would change the character of the subdivision. In all cases, I don't think that this variance would meet those standards. What's clear here is that it would change the character of the locality. Right now, we have one building that exists that complies with code. That's Mr. Miner's building. We passed out a handout. The first 3 photos show what that building looks like. It looks very nice. It complies with code. You have another building that's the applicant today. They don't comply with code. Other than that, they're all vacant lots. All of those buildings stand to be constructed at some point in time in the future. So what we are setting a standard today. You're saying whether or not half the buildings in that neighborhood need to comply with code. So for each building that gets developed from here on out, which are currently owned by my client, can or cannot be in compliance with code. I think it would be talking outside of both sides of the city's mouth if they were to allow only one building in that entire neighborhood to be against compliance with code. My client wants to put up nice buildings. He wants to work with the city, do everything right. But if he has the ability to do it in a cheaper fashion, he's a businessman. So what we're asking for is you to apply the standard today. I think that if you granted the variance, it would change the character of the locality. As far as being able to return a reasonable yield, I don't doubt that it would be expensive. It's expensive to build a building. It's expensive to own a business. The fact that the applicants would be required to spend money is not simply, meeting the standard that it wouldn't be able to turn a reasonable yield. Every other business that is in B3 zoning has to comply with code. There are a lot of great businesses around the city of Joliet, and they turn a reasonable yield. Just because this business, this building was initially constructed in a way that didn't comply with code and has since changed subsequent owners, it's not unique. They knew what they were buying into. They were buying into a problem. And when it failed, I think the right thing would be to return the property to the manner in which the city required it to be with this Hardy Boy siding or whatever it would be, or require them to come in complete compliance with code. We'd ask that you provide, or that you match the facts to the standard that this board has to comply with. Whether or not this is unique to the owner, whether or not the property can turn a reasonable yield without this variance, and whether or not it'll change the character of the locality.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Your Honor, members of the commission, if I could just make a couple of final comments. Mr. Wellner is legally incorrect on his characterizations to the board, so I just wanted to point those out to you. Number one is, we aren't changing the character of the neighborhood. Any of these remaining lots that need to be developed will have to be developed according to the city code, they have to be developed according to the design standards. If the applicant, then the builder or the property owner or whoever it might be, wants to build, does not want to follow the city ordinances, then they're going to have to come before this board, ask for the request under the law, and this board is going to have to grant it. So the city codes are going to remain in existence. As far as his comments about not yielding an adequate rate of return, he's not familiar with the numbers, the financial data with respect to that situation, so he really can't comment on that. So all of Mr. Wellner's comments are legally incorrect, and I just wanted to point that out to the board. So, thank you.
Yeah, I have a quick question. Due to the way the building was originally designed, it seems to me as though it's more expensive and more difficult to erect, a building that would adhere to code. As you mentioned, any new building would have to exist within the code. I wish I knew exactly, what happened in terms of how it was built in such a manner. But in my opinion, I think that's somewhat unique. But I don't know if Mr. German or could comment on if the way that the building's erected is making it, because it's built with that original metal siding. I don't know. Can you answer that for me?
Well, it may have been built with the original metal siding, but they put the hardy board
Right.
on the building, and that complied at that time and even now with the ordinance. It's just, again, that didn't work, so now it's cost prohibitive for this particular building to be able to comply with the ordinance. And then when you figure out where this is located, number one, along with how the building looks right now, that is technically not in compliance, the building looks fine. I challenge anybody in this room or in this commission. I've gone out and personally looked at this building. I couldn't believe it. There is nothing wrong with the appearance of this building. You can't tell the difference between this building and the building across the street, in my opinion, and I'm saying that honestly, not because I represent my client.
Any other questions by the board? Well, once again, I'll remind the board that our purpose is not to enforce laws, but to grant relief to the strict interpretation of the laws. And in this case, I believe that is the proper procedure to take. This board over the years has granted hundreds of variations that don't necessarily concur with surrounding properties. That's the whole purpose of this board. And I was just advise the board to keep that in mind. Did you want another comment, Bob?
I just had one clarification. So if we approve this, we are also approving that this existing steel siding has to be painted. Is that correct, Kendall?
Well, that's staff's desire. If there is a recommendation from the board, it should include a recommendation for approval. It should include the condition that it be painted.
Well, the correct picture seems to show some staining, probably from rain coming off the roof. It looks to me like it should either be painted or at the least scrubbed to make the siding clean. And perhaps paint is the quicker way to do it. That I don't know.
If I could make a suggestion, Mr. Nactry, we're okay with working with staff and working with the city to make sure that the appearance is proper. If there are some places that need painting, I'm sure we're going to paint them, okay? Well, I don't, if you went out there, the whole building, the whole siding does not need to be repainted though, or painted. I think that's
Any
just the
plans that you
distinction.
submit are gonna have to be approved by staff regardless.
Well,
so-
correct, yeah, I mean, you know,
That can
there
be
are
worked
some,
out.
there are gonna be some spots, there aren't many, I don't believe, that could stand some painting, though. We wanna work with staff and have staff oversee that, so we trust that, you know, what they're doing to protect the city.
No,
Maybe just as a point of clarification, the darker areas that you see in the picture there, they do need to be power washed. I mean, a good power washing, because again, the metal is a pre-finished metal, okay? Now, we're not saying we would object to painting. The problem with any painting is when you repaint something that wasn't meant to be painted, how long will it last? You know, will it start flaking? Will it start looking like the previous pictures sooner than later? Certainly, the darker areas that from the hardy board being up for so many years have left dirt and debris on there. That is, a lot of it has washed off through the different rains. Certainly some more of it could use some power washing and scrubbing, and we would not have any objection to making sure that our tenants and that our neighbors are happy.
okay, any other comments?
What are our, although this is a variation, so what would our city, you know, what is our city code involved with metal siding? Like, you know what I'm saying? Would our inspections and our building codes solve a lot of the concerns in terms of having that, or is that a difficult thing to enforce due to the fact that it's a variation?
No, it isn't. I mean, you know, if there is a, again, if there's a recommendation for approval, then there should be a condition that the metal siding be either painted or maintained in a fashion that it doesn't detract from the subdivision. And in that way, it goes with the variation, and then the city has the right to come in and make sure that it's continually enforced, that it be scrubbed or power washed or painted, whatever is appropriate.
I think Mr. Jackson's line is very appropriate.
Okay, the chair's gonna close petitions to the floor and ask the board for discussion and a motion.
Motion to approve with the power washing or painting as needed. I think we can word it that way.
We have a second?
I'll second it.
We have a motion and second to approve the petition. Hold the board.
Mr. Nachtrieb?
Aye.
Mr. Riggs?
Aye.
Ms. Sapper?
Aye.
Mr. Alessio?
I think in this case, there is unique characteristics. I understand Mr. Minor's position as a developer and wanting to maintain neighborhood standards, but with its unique conditions and also location and, you know, it's somewhat secluded, I believe that the existing building, we should grant the variation. Aye.
Mr. Hennessy?
Aye. Thank you, gentlemen. And ladies.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, we'll go back to petition number 2020-28. In this matter, the applicant is Leticia Carrillo, who owns the property with Manuel Carrillo. Location is 744 Collins Street. Their request is a variation of use to continue a mixed use, and that's commercial and residential building, in an I-2 general industry zoning district, and a special use permit to allow an office use in an I-2 general industry zoning district. In this matter, I believe the special use permit part of the request is being withdrawn. So we will move forward with the variation of use request. The applicant is requesting a variation of use to continue a 2-unit at this location in a former mixed-use building, which is located in an I-2 general industry zoning district. Residential uses are a prohibited use in an I-2 zoning district. The original petition included plans to divide the first floor into an office and 1-bedroom apartment. However, The applicant decided to not pursue this plan due to a lack of parking for an office or retail use at this location. Therefore, the applicant withdrew the companion special use permit petition. The City Council makes the final decision on this variation of use request. Under site-specific information, the property is located at the northeast corner of Collins Street and Canadian National Railroad. The property is 37 feet by 100 feet for a total size of 3,700 square feet. The property is zoned I-2 General Industry. The two-story brick building was constructed between 1891 and 1898. The Szabo family owned this property for at least the last 85 years. During the first half of the 20th century, the Szabo family operated a tobacco shop on the first floor while living on the second floor. At some point, the Szabo family converted the tobacco shop into a housing unit. The property was declared a public nuisance in December 2019. The applicant purchased the property in the spring of 2020. Under surrounding zoning, land use, and character, to the north is B3, that's general business, with a mixed-use building. To the south is I2, general industry, that's a currency exchange and parking lot, as well as to the east. To the west is B3, general business, mixed-use building. Applicable regulations, section 47-14.3, prohibited uses, and section 47-17.28, variation of use. Under general discussion, the applicant, who is the new owner of this property, seeks the variation of use to continue the two-unit at this location, which has a long history of being a two-unit. Upon acquisition of this property in the spring of 2020, the new property owners realized that they needed official zoning approval to continue a two-unit at this location, since residential uses are prohibited in the I-2 zoning district. The new property owner has been working through the Division of Neighborhood Services and Division of Building and Inspectional Services to rehabilitate the building. The owner has a memorandum of understanding with Neighborhood Services and has been issued building permits to complete basic work. Since the property was declared a public nuisance, the building will have to be brought up to current code standards. Subject to the agreed-upon work being completed, Neighborhood Services has no additional concerns with this property continuing as a two-unit. As a two-unit property, the building will be subject to the rental inspection program. There will be a 3-bedroom apartment on each level. The proposed floor plans are included with this staff report. The zoning ordinance requires 3 off-street parking spaces for 2 housing units. The property has sufficient off-street parking for 3 cars, which meets those requirements. If the zoning board desires to recommend approval of the request, the following conditions would be included. 1, that the use of the property shall not be expanded in the future and shall be restricted to 2 housing units. 2, that a minimum of 3 off-street parking spaces shall be created prior to the issuance of a certificate of completion. 3, that the driveway and parking area shall be paved. 4, that separate water service external shutoff valve and meter shall be established and/or maintained for each unit prior to the issuance of a certificate of completion. 5, the property owner shall participate in the Joliet Landlord Tenant Screening Program. 6, the property owner shall comply with the city's rental inspection program. And finally, number 7, should the property be declared a public nuisance by the city council, the variation of use is automatically revoked. And that concludes the staff report, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Is there a, I notice there's no time limit in here. Do you want to put something in there? Projecting how soon you want this completed? 6 months, 3 months, what?
Oh, in terms of the work?
Memorandum of understanding outlines that.
Okay, so the memorandum of understanding with Neighborhood Services has a timeline
Yeah, you said you want to, what specific time would you like to have included in there?
Well, I think with that memorandum of understanding, we already have that.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right. Is the property owner here? I must swear you in. Do you swear the evidence you're about to present is the truth under penalty of law?
Yes.
Name and address.
Leticia Carrillo.
Lower the microphone, honey.
Leticia Carrillo, 3219 Pioneer Court, Joliet, Illinois.
Okay, any comments you'd like to make?
No.
Any questions by the board?
I just have one comment. It seems to me that had you bought this property and just proceeded to make 2 apartments, it might have been a long time before you were caught. And I think it's admirable that you actually went to the city to say, it looks like we're in violation. So I commend you being here and seeking this variation.
Any other comments by the board? Anyone in the audience wishing to speak in favor? Is there anyone opposed? Chair closes petition to the floor and asks the board for discussion and a motion.
I move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the petition. Poll the board.
Mr. Riggs?
Aye.
Ms. Safford?
Aye.
Mr. Alessio?
Aye.
Mr. Noctre?
Aye.
Mr. Hennessy?
Aye. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, our final case is petition 2020-30. The applicant and owner is Nicholas Ortiz, location 417 Landau Avenue. Mr. Ortiz's request is a series of variations to reduce the rear yard setback from 3 feet to 1.2 feet and the side yard setback from 3 feet to 1.2 feet to allow the reconstruction of a garage on an existing concrete slab. The owner is requesting a series of variations to reduce the rear yard setback from 3 feet to 1.2 feet and the side yard setback from 3 feet to 1.2 feet to allow the reconstruction of a garage on an existing concrete slab. The Zoning Board of Appeals makes a final decision for this type of request. Under site-specific information, the property is zoned R3, and that's 1 and 2 family residential, and is 6,336 square feet in size. The lot is located in a floodplain. The house was built around 1905. Surrounding zoning, land use, and character. The neighborhood is a mix of single-family and 2-family homes. Surrounding properties are zoned R2, single-family residential, and R3, 1 and 2 family residential. Most properties have detached garages with alley access or front yard driveway access that are non-conforming to the setbacks of these 2 zoning districts. Under applicable regulations, section 47-7.4, that's the R3 yard and lot requirements. Section 47-19.8, findings of fact supporting a variation. Under general discussion, the property owner requests a variation to reduce the rear yard setback from 3 feet to 1.2 feet and the side yard setback from 3 feet to 1.2 feet to allow the reconstruction of a garage on an existing concrete slab. The property owners received a building permit to fix the existing garage in the spring of 2020 with a new roof and siding, but then decided to reconstruct the entire garage. The property owner reconstructed the entire garage without obtaining a permit for the total reconstruction work. The attached photos show the reconstructed garage, which is set back at 1.2 feet from both the rear and south property lines. The reconstructed garage measures approximately 20.3 feet by 24.3 feet. The property owner will be required to apply for a building permit for this garage should the Zoning Board of Appeals approve this request. If the Zoning Board desires to approve this request, the following conditions shall be included. Number 1, that the property owner shall apply for a building permit to reconstruct the garage. Number 2, that the garage shall be compatible in character to the existing home. And that concludes the staff report, Mr. Chairman.
Petitioner present.
My name is Francisco.
Swear the evidence you're about to present is the truth under penalty of law.
Yes,
Name and address, please.
Francisco
Why don't you
Ortiz.
remove the mask
Francisco
and
Ortiz.
speak into the mic?
Francisco Ortiz, 417 Lando, Joliet, Illinois, 60432. I am the guy who built the garage. It's my dad's house. And I go to the city to get the permit for the roof inside. But when I take it down, the garage probably was burned a long time ago. So I know I apologize not to get a building permit. But everything, if you take a look, it's everything on code, everything 16 on center. So, and I put it exactly in the same spot where it was before, not moving right on stage. The garage been there since the house was built. I just put it in the same spot.
Okay. Are you going to speak, ma'am? No.
No, sir, I was just here for interpretation purposes in the event that they needed it.
Okay. Any questions by the board?
I have a question, I think for Kendall. Did I understand correctly that almost all of the houses on this stretch of Landau are in a similar situation? Their buildings are built close to the property lines?
That is correct. We did sort of an aerial review of the neighborhood, and we found that most of the detached garages were non-conforming in their setbacks.
Probably constructed before the setbacks were established?
Correct.
These older neighborhoods, we run into that all the time, Bob. Any other comments? Anyone in the audience wishing to speak in favor? I'll swear you in. Do you swear the evidence you're about to present is the truth under penalty of law?
I do.
Name and address.
David Holt, 654 East Jackson Street, and we had an existing garage and we just got a slab now, because ours burned down. And our property lines are just like his. We don't really have 3 feet off the side property, and we don't have 3 feet off the alley. So, and a lot of these properties were built back in the 1900s with different codes. And I think you ought to allow this gentleman to have his variance.
Thank you. Anyone else? Anyone wishing to speak in opposition? Chair closes petition to the floor and asks the board for discussion and a motion.
Motion to approve.
I second it.
We have a motion and a second to approve the petition. Poll the board.
Ms. Safford?
Aye.
Mr. Alessio?
Aye.
Mr. Nachtrieb?
Aye.
Mr. Riggs?
Aye.
Mr. Hennessy?
Aye. Thank you. Motion to adjourn would be in order.
We
Got
have
any comments?
two other items, Mr. Chairman. Old, new business, not for final action or recommendation. There are no items. And then public comments. This section is for anyone wanting to speak regarding non-agenda items with the 4-minute maximum rule in effect.
There's 8 people out there, but you just can't see them.
A motion would be in order for adjournment.
Okay. Motion to adjourn.
Second.
No,
We have a
you-
motion and second to approve, to adjourn the meeting. Poll the board.
Mr. Alessio?
Aye.
Mr. Nachtrieb?
Oh, okay, aye.
Mr. Riggs?
Aye.
Ms. Safford?
Aye.
Mr. Hennessy?
Aye.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you.
Now I gotta see if I can keep.